Greetings, this is Karni Zor with your weekly astrological forecast. So much is happening, obviously, in the world and in the skies today, and also in relation to the chart of the US. So let's try to see what's happening and talk a bit even about an optimist forecast for the coming 2 weeks, although everything is really happening these days. So let's start with the big thing, with the war going on between Russia and Ukraine. So these days, Pluto, Mars, and Venus are all in conjunction. It's a very, very extraordinary astrological combination. Venus and Mars meet once a year in the sky. Mars and Pluto meet every 2.5 years in the skies. The odds of these three coming together is really rare, but not only that, Pluto is now in the most significant point of the astrological chart. So if you draw the chart, it's a circle as a whole, a ball, then really at the top of this circle, the highest point of the chart, which is called midheaven and has to do with the line of maturity. And this is where the sun is at midday. This is where this conjunction, triple conjunction, takes place. To have this, and in this location, Pluto stands only once in 240 years. So we're talking about something so rare, so significant in the skies these days. When we break it down, Mars is the Roman god of war. We can't avoid that. Pluto is the Roman god of the underworld, planet of transformation. And what Pluto does is to drag us to the lowest point, but it can transform. Pluto, the god of the underworld, has two houses, one in the bottom of the underworld, of the hell, which is what we're feeling right now. But the other place is that Pluto has a house in the Olympus, which is the highest place to be in. And this always teaches us that the lowest points really eventually can transform, and although we might not see it right now, even make something good out of this situation. So when Pluto and Mars conjunct, it's definitely a problematic time. And here, an actual war erupted. When we're talking about our personal lives, we also need to see that Mars and Pluto, when they conjunct, they cause extreme actions, they cause anxiety, they cause fear. It's interesting that Mars and Venus together, they also have their very lovely side of love, because these are the mythological couple, Mars and Venus. And in my astrological forecast, the written one, I chose to give the more optimistic side of how love can come into the a picture these days in our personal lives. But if we're going deeper, we see that Mars is the planet of action, the planet of war, stress, fights. Venus is the planet of emotions. When the two mix, it's not a good situation, because our emotions actually go to extreme. And this is what we're seeing worldwide, not only the actual situation, but the emotions, people's emotions are going into extreme. And it's very interesting because we passed almost 2 years, or 2 years now, of COVID, of stress, and people were in a freeze situation during that. But now something which, of course, also gathered in the last 2 years to do with emotions, like finds its axis. So what we're feeling personally in our lives, and in each different country, we're actually, of course, feeling the result of an actual war taking place, but we're also seeing the volcano eruption of emotions that were buried underneath the ground, Pluto underneath, and now are actually going out, bursting. Now, let's see how this situation will continue. So, the good news, according to the astrological chart and my forecast, is that although this situation seems like very permanent, horrible, where can we go from here? Actually, Venus and Mars are moving very fast away from Pluto. And next week already, Mars will not be in conjunction with Pluto anymore. So I am actually seeing um, a situation that calms down quite quickly. So it all erupted in a very, very like horrible, big, radical way, all words to go with Pluto and with Mars. But things are really going to shift into a very better, calmer situation. Maybe the end of the situation, maybe agreements that will cause a ceasefire already in 1 week. So it's not a permanent situation. This is also our emotions. We were caught up in a situation which we didn't know how long it will last, and then found ourselves 2 years in this situation. So something in us is really afraid of handling another 2 year trauma. But this is not the case, at least not according to the stars. And it's interesting to see that Venus and Mars had 3 children, a, a, two of them boys, Phobos and Deimos, which is fear and anxiety, which is the bad side of combining Mars, the planet of action, and Venus, the emotions. But they also had a daughter, Harmonia, which talks about the harmony which is possible when we do combine our passions and our love, emotions, and our actions. So, yes, this situation in the sky seems very, very difficult, but things will shift next week. Now, this is not the only thing that takes place now, because this all actually sits, this triple conjunction, on the most crucial point of the chart of the US. So I talked last week about the great Pluto transit or return. Once every 240 years, about, Pluto completes a cycle, and usually it's not something that we can witness in a human's life, but in the chart of the US it actually happens that Pluto is now exactly where it was when the US was born, when the Declaration of Independence was made about 240 years ago. And this is a very, very extreme a transit or return, so planetary return. And this means, although the war is now going on in Europe, that what we really need to send our positive energy to, and the greatest challenge will actually not be in Europe, but in the US, maybe to do with the way it will react to the war, maybe another thing. But this is a time of great transformation for the US, like a time of rebirth. And Pluto, as we remember, before it gives us the celebration of being born again, it drags us to the bottom. So we really want to cross our fingers and give all the positive energy actually to the US these days. I know it sounds like, what, we need to give the energy to Ukraine. Of course, we'll send our energy and our love and well-being to Ukraine and to the world, to the Europe and the people all over the world. But we really astrologically are wondering what is going to happen with the US during this time. There is actually so much more going now in the chart. Saturn is in conjunction to Mercury, which talks about the ability to change our mindset, to change thinking patterns. This is in our personal lives, but also globally, worldwide, for governments to change their thinking patterns. Mercury also talks about communication. Governments, people can now change their communication habits. So it's very, very important as well. And another huge, huge thing, which is like also the major thing of 2022, but there's so many other things going on that we almost didn't notice it, is that these days Jupiter and Neptune are in conjunction. I talked about it at the beginning of 2022, that this is one of the major impacts of 2022. And it actually happens now, not only that Jupiter and Neptune are in conjunction, something that happens only once in 12 years, but also it happens when the Sun is actually there. So we have another triple transit of Jupiter, the Sun, and Neptune. This is a wonderful transit. It's like the antidote to the Pluto, Mars, and Venus situation. It talks about lots of inspiration, connection to the unseen worlds. It talks about the return to nature. And this is what mainly we need to learn. So we're talking about the world situation, but we need to remember that if we react in our own lives differently, if we make these small changes and small choices for the better, when many people do that, it can actually add to the feeling in the world and really change situations. So these days, in our own personal small lives, we can always choose love instead of war, peace instead of stress and hatred, connection to the unseen world instead of anxiety that takes us down, connection to inspiration instead of radical acts. And if we choose that in our personal lives, maybe more people will see it, do it, and something better will be added into the energy of these days. And small things, small acts, small choices, different reactions can actually change at least our own lives, and who knows, maybe even the situation of the world. So this is kind of a lot. We'll get to more things in more depth next week. If you are not registered yet to this channel, please register so you can continue to receive my astrological forecasts. On my site, you will be able to read the weekly astrological forecast, which is according to your own birth date. So don't miss that. anewastrology.com is my site. And we'll see one another again next week. Bye bye.